Citizens speak out. As people risk their safety and even their lives to improve conditions for themselves and fellow citizens, they call out for increased freedom and democratic principles. In countries such as China, Greece, Iran, Jordan, Libya, Mexico, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen.
Saudi Arabia, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton publicly announced her support for the efforts of Saudi women to gain the right to drive, affirming also that the matter had been raised with the Saudi government. As she stated, "What these women are doing is brave, and what they are seeking is right."
Jordan's Minister of Communication Taher Adwan, a veteran journalist who joined the government in February, resigned on Tuesday, June 20th in protest of draft laws that he said would restrict freedom of expression and represented a setback to government reform.
Sudan, mediating lead and former South African President Thabo Mbeki announced Monday, June 20th, that the Sudanese and South Sudanese governments signed an agreement to demilitarize the disputed north-south frontier region of Abyei and allow Ethiopian peacekeepers in.
Greece. As Greek labor union members kept up the protest against proposed austerity measures, the European Union voted to delay until July 3rd the next €12 billion installment of a €110 billion loan approved for the country, to give time for the government, parliament, and citizens to agree on the measures necessary to comply with the terms of the loan. Meanwhile, after pledging that his government would do all it could to implement the reforms called for by the country's creditors, Prime Minister George Papandreou received an important vote of confidence on Tuesday from the nation's parliament in support of his efforts.
China. Radio Free Asia reports that Chinese riot troops and police quelled a demonstration of around 100 Tibetan truckers who on June 17th were protesting the Chinese government's decision to award work on the regional Lhasa-Chengdu Highway to mainland China trucking companies. Meanwhile, a group of Catholic faithful in Hong Kong called for the Chinese government to release religious detainees and to respect Catholic believers.
Mexico. Prominent Mexican journalist Miguel Ángel López Velasco, as well as his wife and child, all perished through gunshot wounds after unidentified assailants forced their way into the house Monday morning. Mr. López, who was a deputy editor, columnist, and crime reporter for Nottingham, is the 13th journalist killed since the beginning of 2010. The Committee to Protect Journalists issued a statement calling for the administration of President Felipe Calderón to end the cycle of violence.
Libya. On Monday, activists in southern Libya reported that 22 Libyan soldiers defected from Colonel Muammar Gaddafi-led forces and have safely joined the activists in Benghazi. Also on Monday, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO's Lieutenant General Charles Bouchard issued an apology for 9 civilian fatalities the day before that had occurred due to a technical failure. Meanwhile, Mr. Mahmoud Jibril, senior foreign affairs official of the Libyan activist National Transitional Council, or NTC, arrived in Beijing, China, Tuesday at the invitation of the Chinese government to discuss ways to end the conflict.
Syria. The U.S. government issued a statement Monday that both U.S. President Barack Obama and Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan agreed that the Syrian government must end the use of violence immediately and enact meaningful democratic reforms that respect the will of its citizens. Meanwhile, immediately following Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's speech on Monday, protests calling for freedom, reform, and regime change erupted among Syrians taking refuge along the Turkish border. According to the Washington Times, the Turkish Red Crescent estimates that 30,000 Syrian refugees are staying in camps in southern Turkey, triple the official number provided by the Turkish government Sunday.
On Tuesday, after 2 days of talks with Syrian officials, International Committee of the Red Cross, or ICRC, President Jakob Kellenberger said that the government had agreed to requests for more open access to people and areas affected by the ongoing violence. Also on Tuesday, a new decree issued by President al-Assad, in which he granted general amnesty for all crimes committed before June 20th, was widely supported by tens of thousands who rallied in Damascus and other cities.
However, as clashes broke out with protesting groups of activists who said that President al-Assad is not moving toward democracy and still should step down, government forces opened fire, killing at least 7 activists in Homs, Hama, and Deir al-Zor, including one 13-year-old boy.
Yemen. Tens of thousands of Yemeni protesters rallied Monday in the capital Sana'a, continuing their demands for the creation of an interim presidential council that would prevent the wounded President Ali Abdullah Saleh from returning to Yemen. They urged not only for President Saleh but also his relatives, especially his son and commander of the Presidential Guard Ahmed Saleh, to quit their positions and leave the country. Meanwhile, the U.S. government on Sunday delivered $10 million worth of food aid to assist the 416,000 internally displaced Yemeni people in conflict-affected provinces of Sada and Haja. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs on Tuesday further stated that recent clashes between the Yemeni army and armed groups have caused over 45,000 more civilians to be displaced from cities such as Zinjabar. The UK-based aid agency Oxfam on Tuesday joined the UN in warning of the high humanitarian cost of the nation's turmoil, with worsened shortages of food, water, and other supplies for millions of already impoverished people. Meanwhile, the South Korean government imposed a 6-month ban on travel to Yemen due to the ongoing violence.
We mourn the loss and suffering of fellow human lives, continuing our prayers for all the conflicts to subside so that all nations may determine their own destiny in shared freedom, dignity, and peace.